Good afternoon and welcome to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mideles and I am your host here in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of deep South Texas. Got a great program lined up for you today. So you may remember a couple of weeks ago, our South Texas correspondent Sandra Sanchez came to us live from San Benito, Texas, where there was a shelter for undocumented migrants. Some of them were pregnant. We saw two congressmen, one from here in the Rio Grande Valley and one from San Antonio, come down to visit that facility, take a tour, and see what is happening inside of that center. Well, we had another visit late last week, and that is from Representative Maxine Dexter of Oregon. She is a member of the Congressional Mental Health Caucus and is going to serve on the Energy and Commerce Committee, which oversees Health and Human Services. So she came down to get a tour herself. Sandra Sanchez spoke with her as well. So a little bit later, we're going to get into it with Sandra to see what the Congresswoman had to say about her visit from Oregon all the way down here to deep South Texas in just a little bit. But first, as always, we're going to start by taking a look today at what's trending across the border, starting with the Department of Justice has made it easier to deport people with DACA status. A new ruling by the Board of Immigration Appeals says immigrants will no longer be protected by the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, better known as DACA. Reporter Jorge Vela tells us what it means to dreamers here in South Texas and across the country.
Now we're going to be in fear as DACA recipients because we don't know what's going to happen in a normal routine traffic stop.
Luis Roldan knows that fear firsthand. The DACA recipient was recently detained and deported to Mexico after an immigration appointment, before eventually returning to the U.S. Now, a new decision from the Board of Immigration Appeals could make cases like his harder to fight. The ruling says DACA status alone is not enough to stop deportation, potentially weakening protections for hundreds of thousands nationwide.
An immigration judge doesn't have the authority to dismiss a case even though you have a valid current DACA. So that's not an option that a judge could consider to dismiss a case. So therefore you have to move forward with the case and you're at risk of ending up with a removal order if there's no relief available.
Attorney Wendolyn Rodriguez says that change could have serious consequences, since DACA is only a temporary program requiring renewal every 2 years and offering no direct path to citizenship. She warns if someone is detained while their status is expiring, they could quickly fall out of protection and face removal. The impact isn't just legal, it's economic.
That is a problem because I recently applied for SpaceX here in Bronzeville, and I did everything they asked me to do, from training to passing their tests and everything, you know. And they just called me out of the blue and they're like, hey, so we're going to have to call you back later.
Roldan lost his job because he was in Mexico for weeks and fears employers may start seeing DACA recipients as a risk. Rodriguez says that concern is growing as employers look for stability in their workforce. She also warns even minor legal trouble could now have big consequences.
Even a simple arrest where you prove that you're innocent, just the fact that you have an arrest, that goes to your good moral character. So definitely we have to be careful who we hang out with, and definitely not to get in problems with the law.
Rodriguez says her office has received multiple calls from DACA recipients who claim they were pressured into signing documents and removed from the country. She also gives clear advice for those detained by immigration officials.
Do not sign any paperwork. Do not listen to what they have to say, because their job is to detain you and to force you and play dirty games in a way to try to get you removed.
As for Roldan, the uncertainty continues.
I just hope, this nightmare ends and we'll be good to go, as soon as possible.
That was Jorge Vela reporting. Attorney Wendolyn Rodriguez, who we just heard from again, urges DACA recipients to explore permanent legal options now, whether through family, education, or work visas. She says DACA was never meant to be a permanent solution, and waiting could limit your options in the future. In other news, on Wednesday, the U.S. Supreme Court will hear arguments on the Trump administration's plans to stop shielding Haitians and Syrians from deportation. Those countries won't be the only ones worried about the case, An estimated 200,000 migrants from El Salvador are very worried. Many have lived in the United States for 25 years under temporary protected status, which allows those already in the country to stay with work permits. Court arguments Wednesday will focus on whether the administration fully weighed conditions in Haiti and Syria when it ended TPS and if it prejudiced non-white immigrants. The decisions affected about 350,000 Haitians and 6,000 Syrians. TPS was created by Congress in 1990 to prevent deportations to countries suffering from natural disasters or civil strife. When Trump took office, Venezuelans comprised the largest group of beneficiaries, followed by Haitians and Salvadorans. Trump has ended TPS for about 1 million people from countries including Venezuela, Honduras, Nicaragua, and Afghanistan. Over the weekend, President Trump endorsed the idea of changing the name of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, commonly known as ICE, to the National Immigration and Customs Enforcement, which would give the agency the acronym of NICE. The idea was prompted by conservative influencer Alyssa Marie last month. Quote, "I want Trump to change ICE to NICE so the media has to say NICE agents all day, every day," end quote, according to Marie, who wrote that in a March post on the social media platform known as X. According to our partners at The Hill, late Sunday evening, the president publicly endorsed the switch. A federal agency name change typically requires congressional action through legislation to amend the statutory authority that established the agency. However, the Trump administration has sought to change the name of the Department of Defense to the Department of War without congressional buy-in. In California, protesters are angry about a migrant being released from jail and was quickly detained by ICE agents. They claim the sheriff's department is telling the feds about upcoming releases, but as reporter Teresa Estacio tells us, Sonoma County lawmen say that isn't the case.
On Monday, angry and hurling accusations, this group of immigration activists set up in front of the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office, saying that they are speaking up following the detention of a man who was taken by ICE agents last week as he was set to be released from the Sonoma County Jail on April 23rd.
He called me and he told me that he had gotten out, that he had been detained by immigration agents, and that he was already in San Francisco.
His sister spoke by telephone as she drove to see her brother at a federal holding immigration facility in Southern California.
Although we've heard messaging saying that there's no collaboration with federal agencies, the detentions that happen outside of county jails say otherwise. And we want the sheriff and local law enforcement to know that the community is paying attention.
County activists say that Sonoma County Sheriff's deputies at the jail informed ICE of the man's release from custody following his felony conviction.
The lies and threats of sheriff's deputies are unacceptable.
They're criminals. These are people that have committed crimes.
Juan Valencia is the public information officer for the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office. He says that Sheriff Ingram does not coordinate about someone's release with ICE, but does comply with state law on public data.
Senate Bill 54 states that we could reply back to that request and give them information that that person was arrested for the crime and that they're in our custody. What's happened is the sheriff has changed the policy to where it only applies to if the person has actually been convicted of that crime.
He says that the data provides a different picture than what the activists are putting forth.
There's a total of 69 people ICE took possession of or custody of, and combined, the 69 individuals committed 662 crimes in Sonoma County.
Activists say that they will continue to fight for immigrants and continue to speak up.
How do we prevent these detentions straight from the jail?
In Sonoma County, Teresa Estacio, KRON 4 News.
In other news, a top-ranking member of the Jalisco New Generation cartel has been arrested in Mexico. Aldias Flores Silva, also known as El Jardinero, was captured in Nayarit in the country's Pacific coast. In a planned, developed, and executed operations by the Secretariat of the Navy through its special forces, Aldias Flores Silva, alias El Jardinero, was detained, Mexico's Secretary of Security announced. Flores was wanted in Mexico and the United States, where the U.S. was offering a $5 million reward for his capture. Last year, the U.S. Department of Treasury described El Jardinero as regional commander of the cartel in charge of large territories of Zacatecas, Guerrero, Nayarit, Jalisco, and Michoacán. Flores was considered a potential successor of former leader Nemesio Ceguera, otherwise known as El Mencho, who was killed in February by Mexican authorities. And a caravan of migrants in southern Mexico, mostly made up of Haitians, say they're no longer aiming to get to the United States. The migrants left the southern Mexican city of Tapachula last week seeking better living conditions. But they say they aren't striving for the U.S. now because of restrictions the Trump administration has placed on asylum seekers, including detentions and deportations. Instead, they say they're hoping to settle down in large Mexican cities where they can find work and file asylum claims. And that is a look at what's trending across the border. Don't forget, you can read more about these and all the stories that you see here, plus a lot more on borderreport.com, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Stay with us. We're going to take a quick break, but when we return, Sandra Sanchez is going to bring us that conversation she had with an Oregon House of Representatives member on her visit to that detention facility in San Benito. Border Report Live is back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. Joining me now, our South Texas correspondent, Sandra Sanchez. You, Sandra, spoke with a Democratic member of Congress from Oregon. I misspoke it before we went into the break there, trying to get into it. But you spoke with Representative Maxine Dexter. She's a first-term Congresswoman. Tell us a little bit about why she was down here in San Benito.
Yeah, as you mentioned, she's about to go on the Energy and Commerce Committee, which oversees the HHS, Health and Human Services. Health and Human Services oversee the unaccompanied migrant children or migrant children who are in custody under the Office of Refugee Resettlement, ORR. She came to this facility in San Benito that we've been talking about since early April to conduct an oversight. She's a physician, and she wanted to see for herself how the conditions were and if, this was suitable for these young pregnant migrant teens. So, I asked her, what did you see on this visit late last week? And here's what she said.
Well, we didn't see any girls. And we had given notice that we not just wanted to tour the facility, but we wanted to be able to speak with some of these young women who are being detained there. These are some of the most vulnerable possible humans on this planet being detained while pregnant. in a foreign country without access to any of their parents or family. And transparency and accountability are preeminent in my mind right now. And so we gave notice. We worked with ORR to make sure they knew we were coming. We had an OB gynecologist with us, someone who's from the area, and they did not have anyone that we could speak with. And there are concerns about access to appropriate levels of care here, and it's a healthcare desert. And so whether or not they're getting full care and whether or not they're supported and being able to call their moms when they want.
I asked her if she, why she couldn't speak to any of the girls. She said that they had prearranged to talk to 2 of them, but when they got there was a big surprise, and here's what she said happened.
We were given notice by the attorneys working with 2 of the detainees that they were willing and wanting to speak with me today. Their attorney went, and then in the interim, ORR had strongly recommended and scared them from talking with me.
When you say that, you mean like threat of deportation?
I have no idea. What their attorney said is that the girls were now intimidated and they were scared to talk to me.
She said there was not a child in sight that they saw at this facility. And they were told, though, by ORR facilities officials that there were 7 girls who were actually living there. It included 2 who are pregnant, 2 who had just recently given birth, like with babies under 2 months old, and 3 non-pregnant children there. Now, this is a big drop in the number of girls since Congressman Joaquin Castro and Vicente Gonzalez, both represent South Texas Democrats, had visited earlier this month. There had been at least 13 girls at the time. She says that they were told that the facility has beds for 10 pregnant girls and 74 non-pregnant children. But she said she saw no children, and she wanted to know why. So here's more on that conversation.
But it feels like coercion. Whether or not that happened, I can't speak to. But the question in my mind is, what are they hiding? If they knew I was coming, they knew I wanted to see that this is a healthy space for children, then why wouldn't they want us to see them?
Yeah, so, she is a physician, like you said. She said that they do not have a doctor on hand. We reported that before. They do have a nurse. She said that they lack, quote, very basic things. Now, this includes a special infant scale that's to weigh newborns, and that's really important in high-risk pregnancies, which a 13-year-old giving birth is, to ensure that the babies are gaining weight properly. She also said that there were no Dopplers to check for fetal heart rates in pregnant girls. She says they do have the ability to take vital signs, and they have access to a pharmacy. She asked them if they've ever had to call 911 or activate a medical emergency protocol, and they refused to answer that question. Here's it's pretty incredible, the conversation. Here's more what she said along those lines.
But they had no access to any higher equipment, and if you're not weighing those infants when they're newborns, and if you're not paying attention to whether or not they're gaining appropriate weight, that's something we do at home. So I just felt like we did not see sufficient support for these high-risk young girls. By definition, when you are that young, you are a high-risk pregnancy, and so the most care needs to be ensured in our facilities, and that is not what we saw today. And what's happening to those babies when they're born? Where are these mothers getting the support they need? The mental health care. By definition, if a 13-year-old or a 14-year-old is pregnant, something illegal happened. You can't give consent when you're that age. So we need to make sure that they have trauma-informed, supportive care.
Yeah, her big question was, where are all these girls going? Because they're hearing that migrant children, and she said it, are being transferred constantly. We track these ICE flights, and they're always moving children, adults around. But where are the pregnant girls going? She says that is this move to bring them to Texas earlier. The first quote, she talked about this being a healthcare desert. We all know the difficulties it is in trying to, get physicians. We have a lack of physicians here. We're working very hard with University of Texas Rio Grande Valley to develop physicians through their medical school. It's taking some time.
One of the worst, if not the worst, region in the country when it comes to physician to patient ratio. Right
and Joaquin Castro came down and said that. It's a bit of an insult to the area, but it actually is true. And so, she is a physician, and I said to her, this is amazing that you are from Oregon. You got wind of this in Washington, D.C., so you came down to South Texas to evaluate it. CNN is actually today reporting that the Trump administration is trying to deport migrant minors who are being held at ORR facilities. And so, we don't know what's happening to these pregnant teens. Finally, I asked her if she feels like she got all the information that she wanted, and here's what she said.
No. But I think the fundamental reason for doing these visits is to make sure people know that we are watching and that we will perform oversight. And when you continue to push and it continues to be refused, that should be a red flag for people across this country who just want a government that behaves with morality and compassion. These are kids. These are not enemies. If you release them to sponsors, and my understanding is almost every single one of these children has a sponsor in this country who wants to be with them. And we are holding them now on an average of 200 days. We are traumatizing these kids for life.
So there you have it, Congresswoman Maxine Dexter from Oregon.
Now, this seems a lot different from the visit we heard about a couple weeks ago. You were there when they were visiting with Congressman Castro, Congressman Vicente Gonzalez. If you can kind of refresh our memories here, did they get to speak with any children? Did they see any?
They saw the children. They didn't, I was kind of confused when she said she was going to talk to two of the children. I thought, wow, that would be great if she could. Not only did she wasn't able to talk to them, but they were not in visible sight of her. So, yes, the other two congressmen did see her. Their visits were about an hour and a half long. Just a little context there. One of the reasons she's against a red screen is she actually came to our station early while we were doing shows. She expected to not get out of there till 5:30, 6 o'clock. We were going to hook up around 6:30, but she ended up at like 4:20 being available because they basically, didn't really show her much, and she couldn't see any children, and so her tour ended very quickly. She was kind of stunned, so she actually came to our studio and just chatted with us.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see as she makes it onto the Energy and Commerce Committee and what the oversight looks like once, because as we said in the beginning, HHS will fall under that committee right there. So it'll be interesting to see if she comes back with more folks from that committee. We see so many CODELs, congressional delegations, come down to the Rio Grande Valley, most of them out there by Anzalduas Park. It seems like getting boat rides up and down the Rio Grande. Rarely do we see folks from outside of the region actually come down to visit these migrant facilities. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes once, now that she's been here and seen it firsthand, if she wants to show her colleagues up there in D.C.
And maybe if more come, I think there's strength in numbers. I have noticed during these CODELs that they seem to get a little bit more care from whoever they're overseeing when it's not just one person. So maybe she'll bring some friends next time.
All right. Thank you so much. Sandra Sanchez, our South Texas correspondent, with her continuing coverage on that migrant child detention facility in San Benito, Texas. Thanks so much. Stay with us. Border Report Live will be back in 2 minutes. back to this edition of Border Report Live. Taking a look at a few more headlines before we leave you for the day. Federal agents seized more than $8 million worth of methamphetamine at a South Texas International Bridge. U.S. Customs and Border Protection officers at the FAR International Bridge cargo facility say the meth was hidden in a shipment of tile. The tractor-trailer rig was traveling from Reynosa, Mexico to South Texas when the driver was ordered to undergo a secondary inspection with x-rays and a canine unit. CBP says when officers inspected the pallets of tiles, they found 200 packages of white powder that tested positive for meth. The drugs weighed 908 pounds and have an estimated street value of $8.1 million. The drugs and tractor-trailer rig were seized by CBP officers. And more than 1,000 TSA officers have left the job amid the ongoing shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security, according to the department. Our partners at the Hill say DHS wrote Monday on the social media platform X that more than 1,000 TSA officers have been forced to leave since the shutdown began in mid-February. Ahead of the FIFA World Cup and summer travel, this loss has significantly decreased TSA's ability to meet passenger demand and left critical gaps in staffing, as each new recruit requires 4 to 6 months of training, DHS added. President Donald Trump earlier this month authorized the release of nearly $10 billion in emergency funds from the Big Beautiful Act to pay DHS employees, but DHS Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen said last week that the funding will run out in early May, leaving his department unable to pay employee salaries. As of mid-April, the emergency funds have less than $1.4 billion available, according to the Office of Management and Budget. Don't forget that you can stay informed on all the stories shaping the U.S.-Mexico border as Border Report Live brings you real-time updates, expert insights, and voices from both sides of the border in podcast form. You can listen now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, and the audio and video version on YouTube. That's going to do it for us today. For Sandra Sanchez right here in South Texas, my name's Rudy Menendez. We'll see you next time.